Hello and welcome to another episode of rapid fire review of breast pathology from Kurt's Notes. And today we are doing non-neoplastic breast lesions. So before we begin, please remember to like, share, subscribe and follow for more, and let's begin. So first of all, we will develop this mental schema and this classification where we are going to divide the non-neoplastic breast lesions into three main categories. The first one is a non-proliferative category, which includes the fibrocystic disease of the breast, where we will look for three characteristic findings: fibrosis, cysts, and apocrine metaplasia, these pink cells, right? So the first category is non-proliferative, where we find fibrocystic disease of the breast. Our category number B, or number 2, is our reactive non-neoplastic breast lesions, right? Which will include biopsy site change and fat necrosis. So these two are basically in response to some trauma that is caused to the breast, either a biopsy trauma or some other blunt trauma. So biopsy site change, specifically the sharp trauma, and the fat necrosis due to some biopsy or some other blunt trauma. And then two foreign body reactions will include silicone granuloma along with synovial metaplasia. So this is our group B, which is reactive lesions. And then our group C, which are our inflammatory or infectious lesions, which we can further subdivide into ductal ectasia, diabetic mastopathy, IgG4 related mastitis, and granulomatous mastitis. So if we have this broad classification in our mind, it will be very easy to study each individual lesion and then put it in the individual plug and the individual corner cube that it belongs, right? So the non-proliferative A is the fibrocystic disease. Then the B, reactive, we further classified them into the blunt and then the sharp trauma, which is the biopsy site change and then the fat necrosis, and then those that are developing due to the foreign body reaction, either silicone granuloma or synovial metaplasia. And the third one that are inflammatory or infectious, which we said can be granulomatous, IgG4 related, ductal ectasia, and diabetic mastopathy. So with this thing in mind, let's begin with our reactive and non-proliferative lesions. And the first category is our non-proliferative lesions that are called fibrocystic change. And just by looking at the name, we have to look for fibrosis, we have to look for cysts, and we have to look for some sort of apocrine metaplasia, right? So if they ask you on the exam, what is the most common non-proliferative lesion of the breast, the answer is fibrocystic change. And is there any increased risk of cancer associated with fibrocystic change? No. There is no associated increased risk. So now let's look at the histopathological features. The feature number 1, you will find cysts. Here you can look at the cysts that I outlined with red. They are dilated, fluid-filled. They are dilated, fluid-filled cysts that are formed by the terminal duct lobular units undergoing dilation. They will still have their inner epithelial layer and the outer myoepithelial layer. Therefore, they will stain positive with CK7, our inner luminal marker, and our outer myoepithelial marker CK56, P63, and all the muscle markers, galponin, actin, smooth muscle myosin, heavy chain, SN100 will also be staining positive. But since it's becoming so dilated by the inner cystic lining, inner cystic fluid, therefore the lining will also can also become attenuated, or it can undergo apocrine metaplasia or squamous metaplasia. Then we can also find frequent calcifications and the fibrocystic disease. The next component will be, besides the cysts, would be fibrosis. So here you can find fibrosis in between the cysts. And besides this, the third component will be apocrine metaplasia, which is basically the cells that are normally, that the normal cells are cuboidal. And outside these cuboidal cells, you have the outer myoepithelial layer. So these are the inner luminal glandular secretory cells. And besides this, there is an outer basal myoepithelial cell layer. So what will start happening to these normal cuboidal cells is that they will start to become elongated and they will start to develop a more pinkish hue. So these epithelial cells are going to develop abundant granular eosinophilic cytoplasm, as you can see over here. Then they will also develop these apical blebs, like that they will start developing like they are secreting some sort of material into the lumen, right? So they will have these apical blebs. The nuclei will become prominent and the nucleoli are also prominent, as you can see over here in green. And they can also sometimes be papillary. They can enhance on the MRI. Therefore, someone can become suspicious by the fibrocystic disease on an MRI. identify, and then they can send us a biopsy. But we need to do this entity that this is a benign non-proliferative lesion and there is no increased risk of cancer, and this is very common. And what do you expect for the ER and AR? Since this is undergoing apocrine change, therefore I expect that AR should start becoming positive. And since the inner luminal cells are transforming, the inner cuboidal epithelium, the inner luminal epithelial cells are transforming from cuboidal to apocrine cells, therefore the ER should be lost, and sometimes they have fewer myoepithelial cells as compared to normal. So this was our first category, our non-proliferative lesions of the category of the non-neoplastic breast lesions of fibrocystic disease. Now let's move on to our category B, which are the reactive lesions. And in our category B, the first lesions, two lesions which are related to trauma, which are the biopsy site change, sharp trauma, and fat necrosis, which is the blunt trauma. Okay, so the biopsy site change often occurs after a biopsy or prior surgery, makes sense. And then what are the changes that you will find? So I have divided those changes into 2 acute changes, 3 chronic changes, and 2 associated findings, right? So the acute changes is someone is going to put a needle down the breast. Of course you will find hemorrhage, and the hemorrhage will now be organizing with hemosiderin laden macrophages, and then there can be fresh blood as well. So number 1, you will find blood and hemosiderin laden macrophages. Number 2, the fat that was present in the tract of that needle will now start to become necrosed, and you will find necrosis of the fat along with foamy macrophages. So this is our feature number 1, the acute feature: blood, hemosiderin-laden macrophages, fat necrosis along with foamy lipid-laden macrophages. Okay, then our feature number 2. So that's not necessary that they appear acutely or chronically. I have just called them acute and chronic so I can memorize them easily, right? So chronically I will find foreign body giant cells. These not these large giant cells, sorry about that. These foreign body giant cells that I will start developing over here. I don't see any particular foreign body giant cell, but I can make a foreign body giant cell over here, right? So there will be foreign body giant cells because the biopsy, after you did the biopsy, they might, like, some foreign material might be introduced into the nipple, into the breast. Therefore, you can find foreign body giant cells along with foreign material, right? And this looks like foreign material, by the way, right? This is not normal material, this is foreign material with foreign body giant cells, granulation tissue, scarring and fibrosis, which is indicating that healing process is taking place. So lots of fibrosis, granulation tissue with perpendicular vessels, foreign material, foreign body giant cells. These are changes number 2, which I classified them as chronic. They are not necessarily chronic. And then number 3, we will find acute and chronic inflammation, squamous metaplasia. Again, the epithelium of the ducts has become traumatized, and whenever it becomes traumatized, it will start converting into, whenever it starts becoming traumatized, it will start converting into squamous epithelium. So there will be squamous metaplasia as well. Okay, so we are done with our 3 groups of findings in biopsy site changes. The first one were acute. We will find hemorrhage along with hemosiderin-laden macrophages. We can find fat that is becoming necrosed along with foamy lipid-laden macrophages. Then we can find this foreign material with foreign body granulomas along with granulation tissue and fibrosis, which is going to indicate that the body is trying to heal itself. And then we can also find in the surrounding tissue acute and chronic inflammation along with the normal cuboidal epithelium becoming squamous metaplastic due to the trauma. It's trying to heal itself and developing squamous metaplasia. So when very important warning once it comes to biopsy site change is that there is a very high chance that the biopsy site change can cause an artificial artifact, and this artificial artifact can be mistaken for malignancy, right? And what is that artificial artifact? You know that this patient had a breast biopsy previously, and that breast biopsy was at this particular lesion, the location, 2 o'clock location, which my PA, he said that there's a 2 o'clock, this is the 2 o'clock sample, and this 2 o'clock sample had a previous biopsy, and now at this 2 o'clock sample I find this individual's malignant glands that are just hanging around inside the stroma, right? So what are these individual malignant glands doing here? Is this infiltration? No, it's not infiltration. Why? Because the previous biopsy, what happened due to the previous biopsy is that even if the malignant glands were present at the surface and they were not infiltrating, what my biopsy needle did is that in the process of doing the biopsy needle took some of these cells from the surface and took it to the tip of the biopsy needle and deposited them into the deeper parts of the tissue. Therefore, this is not true invasion and just epithelial displacement. Therefore, you should always pay attention to the sections that say that the previous biopsy was done at this particular site and not diagnose this as infiltrative cancer at the site of the biopsy. Okay, so this is what Dr. Kurtz says as well, that the epithelium can be found at if within the stroma, or it can be found in the vascular spaces, and this is particularly common with the papillary lesions. This can lead to an erroneous diagnosis of invasive carcinoma because the epithelial fragments, they were displaced by the biopsy site, right? Therefore, whenever your grocer has said that this is 2 o'clock, the site of the previous biopsy, therefore you should make a diagnosis of epithelial displacement because there is a known history of previous biopsy at this site, and this is not true invasion. Rather, these are just the malignant epithelial cells which were displaced by the biopsy needle, right? And if you find a epithelium that is present in the stroma away from the biopsy site, or if there are other characteristic findings like stromal desmoplastic response, then you are going to favor the diagnosis of an invasive carcinoma. So this is a very important pitfall in breast pathology biopsy that you should keep in your mind. So this was our first inflammatory or reactive, it's not inflammatory, no, we are not on the inflammatory lesions yet. This was our first reactive lesion according to our classification, right? So according to our classification, our first reactive lesion was biopsy site change. And now moving on to our second reactive lesion, which is a fat necrosis. So what happens is that it develops after surgery, after injury, surgery, biopsy, trauma, and sometimes the patient does not even remember the trauma, but now some sort of a mass is taking place and you got a biopsy of the mass, and it can also, by the way, mimic a malignancy clinically and radiographically. So they are suspecting some malignancy, and what you see on your biopsy is that you find these irregularly dilated cystic spaces, right? And these irregularly dilated cystic spaces are now surrounded by lipid-laden macrophages. Do you appreciate these macrophages as compared to regular macrophages that have maybe ingested hemosiderin or some other dusty material, right? They have some beautiful white material that they have ingested, right? So they are sort of homogeneous and this white grayish appearance, right? So it means that there is this fat which was very beautiful, well circumscribed previously, but now it's undergoing necrosis and has these irregular jagged borders, and around this fat are these lipid-laden macrophages which are trying to clear up the fat that has ruptured from these fat lobules, right? And besides this, of course, you can find acute and chronic inflammation because the cells are going to try to clear it up. You can find giant cells as well in this area, right? So in early fat necrosis, you can find areas of hemorrhage, as I drew myself over here, that in an early fat necrosis you will find hemorrhage, but in the late fat necrosis what you will find is more of a fibroblastic proliferation. The fibroblasts are trying to come and trying to heal the lesion, and there will be abundant collagen deposition. So this is our second reactive lesion in response to trauma, which is fat necrosis, and our first reactive lesion was biopsy site change. Moving on to our third lesion, which are reactions to foreign material, and we further divided the reactions to foreign material into two subcategories: silicone granulomas along with synovial metaplasia. So what happens is that the patient has a history of a silicone implant, and this silicone implant has now started leaking and leaching these bubbles of silicone, these beautiful, you can say, rounded, very well circumscribed bubbles like soap bubbles that are leaching into the tissue. Compare these soap bubbles to these irregular, jagged border appearing fat cells, right? That was fat necrosis, and these beautifully rounded appearing soap bubbles are the silicone granuloma, basically the silicone bubbles that the silicone has leached down into the tissue, and now instead of being surrounded by the lipid-laden macrophages which were present in fat necrosis, here we have foreign body giant cells along with macrophages because it's silicone that is leaching and not fat, right? So the first thing is that we found silicone leakage. The silicone leakage can be present in the form of oval cystic spaces like soap bubbles that we can see over here. These soap bubbles can be empty or they can have amorphous pale material in them, and then they can be surrounded by histiocytes and giant cells as well. And then this can be present in a capsule or they can be present in a draining axillary lymph node as well. And our second lesion, which develops as a result of foreign body reaction, some foreign body presence, is synovial metaplasia. Here we can see this lining. This lining is not a part of the normal breast architecture or normal breast histology, and this lining essentially develops as a result of a reaction to an implant capsule. And since the implant capsule is constantly irritating the breast tissue, so as a result, as I told you previously in the other small lecture, that squamous metaplasia of the lactiferous ducts develops because there is chronic inflammation, right? So the epithelium tries to become resistant and hardy. So similarly over here, as a result of the presence of the implant capsule, this epithelium is trying to become strong and firm, right? It's trying to resist the constant irritation that is being caused by the implant capsule. Therefore, the lining becomes essentially similar to that of a synovium and multi-layered, right? So this is known as synovial metaplasia. So now we are done with our non-proliferative non-neoplastic lesion of the breast, which was fibrocystic disease. We are done with our reactive changes, which were biopsy site change, fat necrosis, which developed as a result of trauma, and we are done with our foreign body reactions, which included silicone granulomas along with synovial metaplasia. And now we are moving towards category C, our final category, which is inflammatory or infectious lesions. So let's study them one by one. The first one from them is duct ectasia. Another name for duct ectasia is periductal mastitis. The clinical presentation would be a perimenopausal or a postmenopausal woman who presents with pain, discharge, mass or calcifications. And now, what do you expect to see on a biopsy, right? So the first thing, as the name indicates, is that it's duct ectasia. So you should find a duct that is very dilated, number one. And then the duct lining can again, as always, as a result of infection, inflammation, the duct lining, which is normal cuboidal, tries to become hardy and resistant as a result of the chronic inflammation and becomes squamous. So you can find that duct that is very dilated, and the duct can have a stratified squamous lining and is undergoing squamous metaplasia. This is our point number one. Then number two, what will you find around this duct? Number two, you can find periductal inflammation around the duct, right? And once the inflammation stays persistent, what is a natural consequence of the inflammation? The body is going to try to heal itself, and will develop number three, fibrosis. So number one, a very dilated duct with squamous metaplasia. Number two, inflammation surrounding the duct along with lipid rich material and foamy macrophages. So some lipid can also become, the fats can also undergo necrosis, and then there can be lipid rich material along with foamy macrophages. And number three, you can find periductal fibrosis. So these are the three histopathological features of duct ectasia. And now moving on to our next inflammatory infectious lesion, which is diabetic mastopathy. The clinical history would be a young to middle-aged woman who might have type 1 diabetes or any other autoimmune disorder such as Hashimoto's, and now she is presenting with a breast mass, and you are going to suspect diabetic mastopathy, which is also known as lymphocytic mastopathy. But how are you going to confirm that this is diabetic mastopathy? The first histopathological feature that you will look for is a lymphocytic infiltrate, since we know that type 1 diabetes is also a sort of autoimmune or T lymphocytic infiltration disorder, right? So you will find a lymphocytic infiltrate that can be present in perivascular area or in the periductal area. There can be a central duct along with the lymphocytic infiltrate around it, a vessel along with the lymphocytic infiltrate around it, perivascular area, or it can be present around an entire lobule, that the entire lobule is now being surrounded by the lymphocytic infiltrate. So number one, you will look for a lymphocytic infiltrate. Number two, whenever there is inflammation, the body is going to try to heal itself and will sell myofibroblasts to begin the process of healing and granulation tissue formation. So number two, you will find, here we see a high power view, you will find numerous myofibroblasts in the area around the lymphocytic infiltrate. And number three, what will these myofibroblasts do? These myofibroblasts will try to deposit collagen and heal this tissue that has been acutely inflamed, right? So you will find a dense keloid-like fibrosis. So number one, lymphocytic infiltrate. Number two, myofibroblasts in the stroma. And number three, a dense keloid-like fibrosis in a lady who has a known history of type 1 diabetes or another autoimmune disorder. And the diagnosis is diabetic mastopathy, also known as lymphocytic mastopathy. Now, moving on to our third lesion in the inflammatory or infectious lesions, neoplastic breast lesions category, this is our IgG4 related mastitis. And the clinical presentation would be a discrete painless mass. And what do you find on your biopsy? You find classic findings of IgG4 related disease, which include dense lymphoplasmocytic infiltrate. But how do you differentiate this lymphoplasmocytic infiltrate from this lymphocytic infiltrate? Number one, this has the IgG4 disease will have lymphocytes along with the plasma cells. So these beautiful ones that have this clear halo are lymphocytes, and these ones that have this clock face chromatin, and you can say the eccentric nucleus, these cells are the plasma cells, I presume so, in this magnification, right? So we have a mixture of lymphocytes along with plasma cells, but this time it is a dense lymphocytic infiltrate, and it's not localized as it was in the previous time in periductal, perilobular or the perivascular areas. Rather, it's a dense lymphoplasmocytic infiltrate. Okay, this is the first thing. Number two, wherever there is inflammation, the body will try to heal itself. So now you will find fibrosis, but just like the infiltrate there was also dense, the fibrosis is also very like particular pattern, having a particular pattern, and therefore it's a pinwheel or a story form type of fibrosis with a dense infiltrate. Whereas in the previous one there was a very dense keloid like fibrosis. Just like the lymphocytes were also aggregated at particular places, the fibrosis were also taking like in the form of a keloid at one particular place, right? So dense keloid like fibrosis in diabetic mastopathy versus story form fibrosis, IgG4 related mastitis. And there are some other things which you can additionally find in IgG4 mastitis, because it's basically the disease is originating within the blood in the IgG cells, right? So therefore the vessels or the veins will also have inflammation, right? And they can develop obliterative phlebitis, where the vein vascular lumen will be obliterated and the vessels can become inflamed with lymphocytes and in them as well. So you will have obliterative phlebitis besides the dense lymphoplasmocytic infiltrate and the storiform fibrosis, and you can also have lobular atrophy. Since there is so much, dense lymphoplasmocytic infiltrate taking place, so much storiform fibrosis, then the lobules can become totally atrophic. And how will you confirm that this is IgG4 related mastitis and not diabetic mastopathy? You can do the IHC, and that will be positive for IgG4 positive plasma cells. Now moving on to our lesion 4 in our category of infectious or inflammatory non-neoplastic breast lesions, and this is our granulomatous mastitis. That whenever you find granulomas like multinucleated giant cells, chronic lymphocytic infiltrate, and they are basically like developing the multinucleated giant cells and the chronic inflammatory infiltrate, they are encapsulating or forming these well circumscribed areas of inflammation, then you will think about the differential diagnosis of sarcoidosis or a prior biopsy site, duct ectasia, or numerous infections such as mycobacteria and fungal infection. So what is important? Whenever you find granulomatous mastitis, you will do your Buck stains, and sometimes even after doing the Buck stains it can be idiopathic. And one particular pattern that you can find that is associated with an infection is that you find granulomatous infection, so lots of granulomatous infection, and that granulomatous infection also has lots of abundant acute inflammatory infiltrate. So you have granulomas, number one. Number two, you have lots of neutrophils that are aggregating in that area, and along with the neutrophils you find a central lipid clear vacuole, right? You find a central vacuole like this, and in that central liquid vacuole you can also find like abundant neutrophils, and this is a diagnosis of Corynebacterium and infectious granulomatous mastitis. So we have now covered all of our non-neoplastic breast lesions. Let's do a quick recap before we call it a day. So the non-neoplastic breast lesions can be divided into A, non-proliferative lesions, which include our fibrocystic change, or fibrocystic disease, where we will find fibrosis, cysts along with apocrine metaplasia. Then our second category B are the reactive non-neoplastic breast lesions, which we further subclassified into those which are developing due to trauma, some sharp trauma such as a biopsy site change, or some blunt trauma such as fat necrosis. Then some that are developing due to foreign body reaction, which include silicone granulomas along with synovial metaplasia. And our category number 3, which are inflammatory or infectious lesions, that include duct ectasia, diabetic mastopathy, IgG4 related mastitis along with granulomatous mastitis. And that concludes our discussion on the non-neoplastic breast lesions. If you like this content, please like, share, subscribe and follow for more, and let me know in the comments what you would like to improve about these reviews. And I will see you in the next video. Till then, happy studying!